Hello there. This is Heirs to the Kingdom channel, and today's lesson we're doing chapter 5 of Daniel. If you're new to this is a Bible study channel, and I do recommend going to Genesis chapter 1 and listening from there on so you can hear the word as it's read in its entirety and explained, especially which parts pertain to us today and which parts don't from the Old Testament. Of course, we know the New Testament pertains to us today, but a lot of the Old Testament does as well, and a lot of people skip that part. A lot of the base laws and statutes, commandments and statutes from God to all humanities in the Old Testament before Abraham came onto the scene and before the Israelites had their specific laws and their covenant. But I said, this is the book of Daniel. The title of this one is Belshazzar's Feast. Now, this is going to be a little troubling to listen to because we're thinking Belshazzar. That's like Belteshazzar is Daniel. Belshazzar is the son of King Nebuchadnezzar. And apparently, I didn't really mention this, but he has passed away, and now his son has taken the kingdom. So they don't mention this between 4 and 5. But in 4, King Nebuchadnezzar went a little crazy and started living like the beasts, living outside, eating grass, stuff like that. But he did come to his senses because he's the one that gave the declaration of it all. So, anyways, there's only 31 verses to read. And it's like, this is another one where, what's one of my main sayings? Do not be on the wrong side of God's wrath. Yeah. We're not to do things to provoke God either. It's not wise to do that. I mean, you can question God. I do believe you can even be mad and yell at him from time to time when your life turns to crap for a while, until you get your senses back about you and then ask for forgiveness. I've done that quite a few times. He understands it. Jesus has walked this earth before. He knows how chaotic it can get, how painful it can be. When he was on this earth, he had the ability to perform miracles. We don't have that ability. We can't heal ourselves or turn rocks into bread or this, that, and the other. We are left with whatever we can. And it gets very, tiring and trisome. And it really puts you through the ringer from time to time. But, and this is the one and only time we really hear about Belshazzar. He messes up. And in the lesson here, in this chapter, we hear that he knew what he'd done, what items he had in his hand and was disrespecting them. But also, this is Old Testament times where, God had to get the people to fear him. To believe in him, to know that there's only one true living God. God Almighty wanted all these other fake gods to quit being worshipped, to quit being talked about. It's like children today in the public education system. They go home and hear from their parents one thing, they go on the internet and study some things of the same nature and hear that. Then they go to school and they hear other things pertaining to the exact same thing. Now, the fact of the matter is there's only one truth. Which truth is there? Because to a child, they don't know any of it yet. And this is why it's very important that you make sure your children know what they're learning is real. Your responsibility as a parent is to teach them. If you can't trust your public education system or even your private education system, then you need to take the reins and do it yourself. There's no law out there that says you have to send them to an indoctrination camp. But these public education systems, these universities today, they will turn your children against you. And so this is, why it's very important if you're a parent to be involved in your child's life. I got relatives. I love my relatives, but they do some horrendous stuff. They have children, and they're letting everyone else raise their children, except their children only listen to their grandmother, not their great-grandmother, not their parents, not anyone else. And it's the only reason why they listen to their grandmother and grandfather is because they'll get the butt tore up. And they know that those two mean business. The rest of them don't really teach them properly. But God's going to hold it against the parents, especially the father. There's a commandment for women that says women are not burdened with the responsibility of teaching. That's the man's job. That also falls into the category of discipline. That's what that means is, it's not the woman's place to discipline the children. It's the man's place. Now, women can teach their children reading, writing, math, arithmetic, whatever. But when it comes to things about life, once again, the man, the father, is supposed to step in and teach his sons. The daughters learn from normally their mother how to be good wives and housekeepers. But when you skip steps and you raise spoiled brats, you, the parent, is going to be responsible for their sins. Their sins are going to be held against you because you didn't raise them properly. This stuff is already in the Old Testament. It talks about it in the New Testament too. But and so a lot of things are skipped today. That's why I always tell people start in Genesis chapter 1 on my channel and get caught up, and I'll show you in Scripture these things. But let's go ahead and get in here in the book of Daniel. This is another interpretation that God gives him the information on. So, chapter 5, verse 1. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. Now, this son of King Nebuchadnezzar, which is now king himself, knew where these vessels come from, and he knows of Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. As I said, I always have a hard time remembering their. I think Ezekiah is one of their original names. The Abednego's original name was Ezekiah. Anyways, he knew of the God they serve, the one and only true God. So he knew of this before all of this. So it ain't like that he can play dumb private. Let's continue on here, verse 5. And the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees smote one against each other. So his knees were knocking against each other, and he was pretty much frightened. His mood changed instantly. And he's like, oh, Lordy be, what have I done? What's going on here? And yeah, you see a floating hand writing on your wall and stuff, and yeah, you're going to be a little frightened as well. Continue on, verse 7. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. To be clothed in scarlet means that you are of royalty, that you are a very important person. If you were wearing certain clothing and stuff and you had not earned or been given the title to have that attire on, you could be sentenced to death for it in these times. But let's continue on here. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. Now, the one thing we see here, the queen, even though she knows her husband has more women that he beds, she still supports her husband. She's not jealous about it. She doesn't hate him for it or this, that, and the other. Why? Because this is normal in these times. So when women choose to be vengeful, vendetta, all this other stuff and overjealous stuff, it is their choice to do these things, because it already spoke of the queen's wives, the concubines. Now, I ain't saying it's right, but when ill-hearted women use things as an excuse on why they destroyed someone's car or their hobbies or this, that, and the other, it's by choice. Again, he said, so, well, it made me mad, and this is the justification. So, no, you chose to be evil. Your job is to support and assist your husband, and that's what this queen is doing here. Informing her husband, the king, of things. Verse 11. There is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of thy father light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar thy father, the king, I say, thy father made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. Forasmuch as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of hard sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known to him the interpretation. So this is also a sign of meekness, humbleness, and no desire to have the world. Worldly people will be tempted by these, gold, fancy clothes, and titles. But a godly person does not. Because a godly person knows the only one ruler that should be around is God himself. But let's continue on here. Verse 18. O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would he slew, and whom he would he kept alive, and whom he would he set up, and whom he would be he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen. And his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will. And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, and of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Sorry, I got a little tongue twisted there on the ending part. Didn't mean for that. My dyslexia kicked in a little bit. Now the one thing is, the writing on the wall does not tell Daniel this. God already told Daniel what all had happened. And Belshazzar, the new king, says, wait a minute, no one told him anything about this, but yet he knows. So he knows that he's being talked to, or he has been informed by the one that will know these things. But the one and only true God. Continue on, 24. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene. God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel. Thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Peres. Thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. So, yeah, God didn't wait around for 20 years of someone on death row. He punished them for, that instantly, that very night. But, like I said before, and the lesson already teaches, Belshazzar knew what those vessels were. He knew of everything that his father went through. He knew that his father, knew of the one and only true living God. Knew of all this stuff beforehand. And even knew of Daniel. Had to have known of Daniel to know of all this other stuff. But says, well, I'm king. I'm going to do things my way. And there's some things that once done can't be undone. But this is also Old Testament and part of the law. Aren't you so glad you're not under the law? Because I don't think anybody would be alive today if we were under the law still instead of under grace. Let's finish up this chapter. Last verse. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So a score is 20 years. So 20 times 3, 62. He's 62 years old. So this whole thing back in the old times, well, even back in the Wild West of this time, most people only live to the age of 35. And people used to live quite a long time. But it was people over the years started learning bad practices of life. They drank the wrong stuff. They ate the wrong stuff. They indulged in the wrong stuff. And that stuff shortens your life. The one thing that they don't do at this time, you never hear them talking about smoking. Not really. I think that had a lot to do with things. Smoking came onto the scene, and everybody used to smoke, especially here in America. Like I said before, I smoked for over 27 years. It's quite addictive. It's quite pleasurable to do. And it's got some calming agents to it as well. So I truly believe, I have a friend of mine, we talk about the Mary Jane stuff. Should it be legal, should it not be legal? And it's like, well, I know it's put here naturally, and it has effects onto it to help relax people, and it's not known to kill you for it. So I'll say if used properly, brownies or gummies or stuff like that, hey, why not? As long as it's used properly, But anyways, going off a different rabbit trail there. The main lesson we got here was, we got a few lessons in this. One is don't tempt the Lord. 2, remember your place. And as a godly person, you always help without caring about getting rewarded for it. That was the other thing Daniel did. He lived humble and meek. He didn't care about those rewards for doing what needed to be done. He just helped someone out. Someone asks for his help, he does it. That's what, even today, we're under that today. We help. A godly person helps. You have a desire to help. You enjoy helping other people. It'll get you in trouble sometimes, but it has me anyways. But I like to help people. If people need help, I try to help them. I even try to help animals as much as I can. It's it's just something that Jesus installs in you. A desire to help those in need. It's to show kindness, love, and mercy. That's what we're to do to everybody. I venture to say everything. But yeah, anyways. So yeah, this king had a short kingdom. And so we're almost halfway through Daniel. So there's only 12 chapters in Daniel. Far shorter than Ezekiel. But I said they've got stuff in here. Ooh, the next one is the Den of Lions. I'm kind of reading ahead. I've always said this. I don't have everything memorized where it's all at in the Bible, which chapter, which verse, and blah, blah, blah. This, not of everything. But anyways, so I was just reading ahead there. I do know what the Bible means when it explains things. If I don't know right then and there, I will do some quick research and find out as fast as possible. And that's what it is to study the Word of God. So I hope you're enjoying these studies. If you will, you can leave some likes if you want to. Share this stuff if you like. The more the merrier. We need to reach a lot of other people out there. So if you share the channel with others, you're helping share the gospel. But it is your call, your choice to do. But I'm going to go ahead and end this lesson here. So remember to pray. Pray for yourself, pray for others, pray for the lost, pray for the found. Pray for everything, everyone, all the time, all day long. God always wants prayer and praises. And don't forget to give it to Him. He doesn't ask much from us at all. He gives us far more than we deserve, and He asks very little in return. But until next time, God bless, good night, and goodbye.